You can probably tell why I'm here this morning. If you're a regular viewer, then you'll probably know I'm predominantly a wildlife photographer. But sometimes the conditions are just so perfect for landscape photography. And this is a shoot that I've actually had in mind probably for about 3 months. Last night was the coldest night of the winter so far. Very, very cold, and it's probably still below zero right now. As forecast, tons of mist and fog around, and what that's also led to is a bit of a hoar-frost, which is just like a slightly thicker, puffier frost, kind of like freezing fog really, so it's better than a normal frost. This is a woodland that I know works very, very well in these conditions, so it's just a case of waiting for the right day to do it, which is definitely today by the looks of it. One of the difficulties with mist and fog is actually having the right amount. So if it's not enough, it just doesn't really do anything. But also, equally, if there's too much of it, then that doesn't work either. So you want something just in the middle. So nature photographers are always wanting perfection. And my advice in these conditions is actually to not try and be too specific. It's okay to pre-visualize an image, a composition that you've had, but when you actually get here, it can look very, very different. The reason being that the mist and fog can change so much. Over a few minutes or even seconds, it can change how the image looks. So composition in these conditions is actually very much down to where the mist and fog is and how much of it there is as well. Now, I've actually photographed this area before, so I guess it proves that sometimes the same spots are worth revisiting during different seasons. I've settled on this composition, which I think looks really good. So I've got this foreground bush which is really covered in frost. That's going to add a lovely bit of foreground. Obviously got the path leading into the image, helps to draw the eye in, and also just those fantastic repeating patterns of the trees kind of receding into the mist. So it's a very simple composition. Sometimes it's best to just keep it simple. Don't try and complicate, don't try and overcomplicate things. So I'm just going to use a standard lens. 50mm lens works absolutely perfectly for this composition. So ISO 100, I don't really see the point in not going down to the lowest ISO to keep the quality up. So ISO 100, f11 at the moment. For these kind of images, I don't think it's as necessary to get front to back sharpness, because that softness of the trees and the distance is part of the atmosphere. So if they look a bit soft, I don't really think it's an issue. But what I do want, which is really, really important to me, is this foreground bush covered in frost. I want to make sure that that's nice and sharp, and then most of the rest of the image sharp as well. So I'm using live view, so I'm just going to put it onto live view, and then I'm just going to zoom in. I just zoom into ×5. I find that that's enough. So I'm going to take 2 different shots, 2 different focal points, and the first one I'm just going to focus and make sure that that bush is nice and sharp, and then the second one I've actually chosen for this tree. So I've got 2 focus points there. Oh man, this mist is just fantastic. Looking absolutely gorgeous, really happy with that composition. I've got 2-second timer and mirror lock up, so always a good tip, just double check it's on manual focus. That's happened to me in the past, worst thing that can happen, trust me. So 2-second timer, mirror lock up. It's really tempting in these conditions just to start running around the woodland and just trying to get loads of pictures, but you're usually best trying to concentrate on just a few shots, get a few really cracking images rather than lots of average ones. When it is this cold and you get mist and fog in the morning, it just tends to linger quite a long time. So I think this is probably set for the morning, may even linger into the afternoon, which is fantastic because it can be such a fleeting thing. It can only last sometimes like half an hour of good misty conditions, but in the winter time it's going to last a lot longer. And also the temperatures are still so low that it means everything's still coated in frost, and the frost isn't melting either, so it gives you a lot of opportunity, a lot more time to take your pictures. I found something else which I really like, but I'm kind of making the cardinal sin by just looking at it with the camera on the tripod. It's not the way to do it, so if you're trying to find the best composition, you should look at it handheld and then put it on the tripod. So that's what I'm going to do. It took me ages that. I put it on a higher ISO, maybe a wider aperture, and I just do like a test shot. If I just left it on ISO 100 and did a test shot, I'm going to end up with an incredibly blurry image because it's like a half-second exposure. So if you just bump up the ISO and the shutter speed, then you can have a look, do your test shot handheld, and then get it on the tripod. And then once on the tripod, you can get your settings exactly as you want them. And sometimes doing these kind of shots, I'd maybe go for 200 or 400, just because there's usually a bit of breeze in the air and you don't want to get any blurring. But it's so still. I can't believe how still it is. Literally nothing is moving. So I'm going to go with the ISO 100. Now the aperture, I'm actually using a 50mm lens again on this image, and I've got in quite close to these leaves, so the background's never going to be in focus anyway. I quite like the effect, so I'm going to stick with a fairly wide aperture. I'm going to go back into live view again. Right, now in choice of where to focus, now I've got a choice here, so I could focus either on the very foreground leaves, but if I focus on the sort of middle leaves, it's giving a bit more depth of field throughout this foreground area. With the choice of lens and aperture, woodland backdrop is out of focus, but you can still tell clearly what that backdrop is, and yeah, it's an effect I really like. Almost like more of an impressionistic feel to it. Do you know what? I never have coffee. Like, I never ever bring a flask with me, hardly ever. But today I actually have, because I just thought it was going to be so cold. And today I was actually expecting this mist to hang around for a long time, rather than just a fleeting moment first thing, which meant that it's going to get pretty cold if I was here for a long time. So, oh god, too much sugar. Nice though. Should definitely do that more often. Okay. I'll be honest, there's like pictures everywhere. But again, it's much better to spend a lot of time on just a few pictures. Today's about being more creative for myself. I'm not worrying too much about the sharpness throughout the image, like getting front to back sharpness with smaller apertures. If I think the picture looks better with a wider aperture, then I'm going to go with that. Again, 50mm lens. I haven't actually taken a picture with anything other than the 50mm lens so far. So for this one I wanted a more abstract appeal. So I'm basically looking straight down towards these thin beech branches, and then I've got the tree in the background, again as an impression. When I do these kind of shots, misty woodlands, most of the time I don't use any filters at all. A polarizer I just think kind of destroys the atmosphere, and a graduated filter possibly you could use sometimes, maybe if the mist's really bright, to tone that down. But I actually find most of the time it's just better without any filters at all. I just find you get better, more natural looking images. So that's what I've done today, no filters. Another composition I've found, I've just spent, oh god, it's probably been about 15 minutes and I just can't get it as I want it. Looked at it, I've walked all the way around these frosted branches, I've walked all the way around to check it from every single angle, just can't quite get the shot that I seem to have in my head, which is sometimes how it goes. But I am still taking an image. I think it's nice. It's got a really nice curve to that branch with all like almost like frosted needles on it. Again, I've gone with f4. I really like that effect that I'm getting today, and also I'm slightly overexposing, so it's just, maybe it's just how you feel at the time, I don't know, but you could underexpose your misty images or you could overexpose them depending on the mood you want to get. So today it just feels to me like it looks better if it's overexposed. I left my banana in the car, it'll be frozen by now. Right, keep going. It's still a winter wonderland now. Everything's still covered in hoar-frost. It's not even melted in the slightest. Anyway, I think it's going to be my last shot of the session. As much as I'd like to stay here all day, I've got other things that I've got to do. So, last shot, I'm going to do something different. I've only used the 50mm lens so far, which just seemed to work for all the images that I took, really. But here on these frosted branches and leaves, I decided it was quite a good candidate for the macro lens for the Canon 100mm. So I've put the 100mm macro on, and basically I'm just trying to concentrate on what I think makes good composition. Background's nice and clean, and I'm quite close anyway. With the macro lens, it's going to diffuse that background. I've got to change the settings a bit now, because anytime you're doing macro stuff outside, you're almost always going to get a bit of movement. There's the tiniest bit of a breeze, so for the wider landscape shots it's not an issue. I wouldn't really worry about it, I'd pretty much ignore it. But for this shot, that tiny breeze is turning into quite a lot of movement. So two things to combat that. First of all, I've got the shutter speed up, so I've increased the ISO. In fact, I've got the ISO up at 640 at the moment. That's giving me a shutter speed of 200th of a second. Still keeping the aperture at f4, just try and keep the background nicely diffused. What I'm also doing is I'm taking it off the 2-second timer, so I've got it on normal single frame rate. And then also I've just slackened off the ball head a bit, so that allows me to just make very small adjustments to framing and refocusing, but I've still got a really good solid base. Thanks for watching the vlog, and if you're not subscribed and you want to see lots of nature photography videos with plenty of tips and techniques, then do click on the subscribe button and the bell icon for notifications. And next time hopefully will be a wildlife photography video, which is what this channel is mostly about. But today I just couldn't not come here to this gorgeous landscape and make the most of these very, very rare conditions. So again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you somewhere in nature sometime soon.